Streaming or screaming?
Well,
No screaming. No screaming.
no screaming well.
Let me know when you're ready.
We've just got a few seconds lag.
I encourage it.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the last Council meeting for 2024. How time flies when you're having fun. Tuesday, the 10th of December at Bayindi. I'd like to begin with the Kaurna acknowledgement. So, the City of Prospect acknowledges that we are on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay our respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. And now the Council Pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Thank you. Okay, item 2 on the agenda, on leave there are nil. Item 3 on the agenda, apologies there are nil. Item 4 on the agenda, I'm just going to note a slight change to this, which came out of our review of meeting procedures. So what we'll be doing moving forward is that at this point in time, people can indicate the intention to declare a conflict of interest. And when we are at the relevant motion that you are declaring a conflict of interest, you will need to then formally declare a conflict of interest. And then if you need to leave the room, you leave the room. If you're not going to leave the room, you don't leave the room. But it's just a bit of a two-part process there. So that's a change that we're implementing moving forward. So therefore, item 4, indication of intention to declare a conflict of interest. Is anybody indicating that they intended to declare a conflict of interest? Councillor Backer.
Just for item 13.
Any other intentions to declare a conflict of interest? As there are no more, we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes. There's a recommendation that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 26th of December be confirmed. Would anybody like to move that way? Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nelson, would you like to speak to the motion? Unless there's any further discussion, I'll put that one to the vote. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry, I'm just going to vote.
She's hungry. She's hungry.
I thought you were going to summarise.
This is how we get through.
I'll take that as your summary, Councillor Barnett. And let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 6 on the agenda, public question time. I don't believe there are any members of the public in the audience, so therefore there are no public question time. Petitions, there are nil. Deputations, there are nil. Item 9 on the agenda, questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Backer.
Yeah, hi. Just in regards to a brief discussion I had with former Councillor Alan Harris this morning in regards to our service level agreement with East Waste in relation to bin lids being closed after being dropped down. So he had mentioned to me, and I think also to the Mayor and Councillor Nelson, that he had approached administration previously regarding the service level. I was just wondering if we had an answer for that. So when they put the bins down, to ensure that the lids are closed.
CEO, microphone for Mr. Delena.
So, Mr. Delena might be able to take this one, if you wouldn't mind.
Through the chair. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to respond to the question and the advance notice, Councillor. Just to confirm, East Waste is obviously a subsidiary of CAMP, regional subsidiary of CAMSOL. There's no direct contract in place with East Waste, but we have obviously the service levels that they operate within. We're in the process of defining those service levels. However, on that specific question, there isn't a defined operating service level. with respect to ensuring the bin lid closes. It is something that is an ambition of the driver to close the bin, but close the lid when he's setting the bin down. However, there's various elements that impact that: wind, the calibration of the arm, and as well as the expertise of the driver itself. So there are a number of factors that impact that. There isn't an expectation that the bin lid is closed, albeit that is their intent. And they certainly won't get out of the vehicle and run out and close the lids. If that was to be a target in this council, there would then be a significant impact to the operating position with respect to the waste budget.
Thank you.
There's just one more in relation to, I can see the rotunda is now without scaffolding. Is there an official opening for the rotunda?
Yeah.
So through the men, no, there's not. We are in internal sort of discussions around how we might manage the opening of the rotunda, possibly combining it with an event like Euclid or something like that. But we haven't settled on a final position for that yet.
Thank you. Any further questions without notice around the table? If not, we'll move on to item 10 on the agenda, reports for decisions. So item 10.1, Matthews Park, round 2, consultation results and final concept.
Oh, sorry, Councillor, I thought you were... Sorry.
We've got the hand.
Final concept design recommendations on page 4. Do I have a mover? Councillor Tweedledee.
I'm happy to move this. Look, I just want to thank all the residents for their feedback, their comments. I think together with the Access and Inclusion group, all the input that they've provided, we've created a really great concept design. It's fun, it's bright, it's colourful. I think the children will love it. I think, when we design a park, we don't go in there and we do like for like equipment. We do it better, we improve, we upgrade it so that the parks look fantastic, but also for the children to have a great time, and there's lots of laughter there. The only thing that's screaming out at me is the tennis club, the access to the general public, and I really hope that we get a report back with opportunities for them to open up the space for our communities to use. But other than that, I really hope you support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nguyen. Do I have a second to Councillor Wilson?
Absolutely. Very encouraging to see the consistent feedback that we got from the community in line with our recent workshop. So it's great to see that Council and the community is both on the same page. Great work from the team to get us to this stage. And as per Councillor Nguyen, I'm very keen to hear how the negotiations go with the Blair Atherton Tennis Club to make sure that we do support the 78% of residents that want access to the public tennis courts. Totally support this, hopefully for a successful budget bid, and hope to see work starting early 2026.
Thank you. Any further discussion, any points that anybody else would like to make that haven't already been raised? If not, I'll head back to Councillor Nguyen to sum up. Thanks for that. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 10.2, Main North Road Pocket Park naming update, recommendations on page 101. Do I have a mover? Councillor Groot.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'd love to move this one because I was reflecting on this as I was reading the paper on the weekend, and I just thought it's a great example of how we thought we had it right, then we didn't, so we made the rescission motion, and here we are back now considering it again. And I note that both the Louisa Da Costa Trust trustee and the member for Adelaide have both notably supported the naming of the park, so I think that's a really good outcome that we've been able to say, hang on, didn't quite get it right, let's go back to the drawing board very quickly. And just to pass on my thanks to the CEO and to staff who did that, because I know that it's somewhat probably a little bit frustrating when you come with the paper expecting an outcome and we kind of turn on a dime, but thank you for doing that, because I think we get a better outcome. I think it's probably, someone else will correct me, the first time we've named a park after a female in the city of Prospect, so I think it's quite historic for that reason as well. And it's a dual naming, which is consistent with our practice, albeit not policy. And so I think it's a bit of a win-win for everyone. So thank you again to staff for doing that. I certainly support it.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Is that a question or
Yes,
a enthusiastic seconding?
It's an enthusiastic
Seconding.
seconding and statement,
Yes.
and I just couldn't
Over
come up
to you.
with my my councillors' comments, and let's hope we can continue in a similar vein if we get the opportunity of dual naming. And I'm preparing a list of notable females that have in our community, of which I think people might be surprised that there are many. So more about that later when the Prospect Local Group celebrates its 20th anniversary next year.
Exciting times. Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Any further discussion, any points that haven't been raised? Otherwise, I know you're looking forward to summarising this one. Councillor Grew?
I'm actually looking forward to the Christina Barnett Rotunda. It would be quite fitting and suitable. But no, look, thank you again. I think this is a really good outcome, and hopefully it gets unanimous support. If not, I'll look forward to calling a division, because we have new procedures now which require people saying yes to stand up and I say no. So looking forward to trying it out tonight, if there's any split votes, but I don't know if we'll be getting tonight. But if not, forewarned is forearmed.
Thank you. Interested to think whether Councillor Barnett would need to declare a conflict of interest if that came across our desks at some stage in the future, but we'll leave that until...
I hope it's not referring to being rotund.
And also no reference to being a posthumous naming
that's right,
type thing as well.
Right.
So
no dead naming here. So.
Let's put that one to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously.
I thought it would.
I thought it would.
Just a quick division.
I was hoping you would.
Item 10.3, curbside food waste systems grants. Recommendations on page 105, noting that we have two options to consider almost the same, except for the first one is the entire City Prospect. The second one is a portion of the City Prospect, so I'm looking for a mover for either option. Councillor Nelson.
I was kind of going to wait for others, but I'm happy to start things off. So, my preference at this stage will be option 2. Only because, as previously stated, I'm fully supportive of FOGO. I love the FOGO idea, keen to get it in the North Ward, keen to have myself and my family on it. We obviously work pretty hard on our recycling. But obviously in the back of our minds we're waiting on the state government to decide how they're going to progress with this proposed legislation. I think it remains a sensible step that we don't go and expel residents' rates on what may become a costly exercise of the unknown. With potential of additional $300,000 per annum in opt-out costs and opt-up costs. So I think until we know that, it would be irresponsible to roll out to the whole city. I would support the expansion of the plan to an additional portion of the city, option 2, but the grant should be subject to a successful budget bid.
The grant should be subject to a successful budget bid.
There is a note in the comments from the executives that the party making the grant, so the curbside waste systems grants, they said they would be amenable to having any grants subject to a successful budget bid.
Oh, so you can use that wording and preempt. Okay, yep. Thank you.
So I didn't have wording prepared.
It's in the report. We'll take care of it. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Do I have a seconder for the second option? Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak to the second option?
Yes, certainly. I think knowing, that we most probably, I think I can speak reasonably confidently, love to see it throughout the whole city, but again, we haven't had, anything positively come back from the state government on this, so pending that, I think this is the sensible way to go. We still keep it alive, and hopefully we'll be able to get there, if not this budget, the next year's budget.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Any further discussions or questions before we sum up? Councillor Grove.
Probably just to reiterate the point, my preference would be to see it citywide, but I think based on the vote for the budget and the discussions we've had around FOGO, they probably wouldn't get up, so we're just trying to save us a little bit of time in going to the option B. Interestingly, in the last 48 hours, I've spoken to 2 residents at their houses who are concerned about green waste and concerned about street litter and and having full bins and concerned about a whole lot of issues around not having enough FOGO capacity. And so I've encouraged them, and maybe we can point out those councillors who might need some gentle persuasion to suggest a full rollout in future budgets, because I think it is something we should be doing. I slightly disagree with my councillor on my right here that sometimes we've got to just give it a go, because I think we wait for the perfect moment. That perfect moment will never exist in anything. So sometimes we've just got to kind of leave with our chin and say we want to do this. So I think this is a great first step. I've certainly supported going out to a portion of the city of Prospect, and whether that's which ward or which day of the week that is, I guess administration will come up with that. But very much support it. I'm always hesitant to support budget bids being made in advance. I think recommendation here is probably a little bit different to what we've seen in the past, which is support the budget bid being made, not committing us to the budget bid. So I think we have to be careful about committing ourselves to it, but that's not doing it. So I'll support recommendation 3 as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Deputy Mayor Nguyen.
Yeah, I'm happy to support this option too. And thank you to the team for getting this prepared in such short notice so that we can apply for funding. Yeah, I would be supportive for us to, receive any kind of grant. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to trial it across a portion of the city, and yeah, see where we go from there.
Thank you. Briefly from the chair, just a couple of things. So through a brief conversation with Sam earlier on today and the CEO, I believe that the opt-up and opt-out rates are still very low, so still really tracking well, and we haven't seen a drop away over time, which is really encouraging. A second point is that this is gaining momentum. The Mayor of the City of Unley is putting forward a motion to the LGA, I believe, and he's specifically referencing what we've done and the success we've achieved. And I don't really want someone else to steal our thunder. And given that we've been fairly leading, particularly from an era point of view, I would have been happy to support if I had to vote option A, because I think sometimes you've just got to, as the former Deputy Mayor said, you've just got to have a go. So I'm happy, if I'm asked to vote, I will be happy to support the second option, but I would have also been happy to support the first one. Heading back to, who moved it? Sorry.
Yeah,
another question.
I agree with this discussion that's had around the table, but I certainly, because it is ratepayer money, we do have to take a business case, and I think as we've discussed before, the different quadrants of the city do have different user profiles, and I think that has to be explored, and there has to be a sort of return as well as sustainability angle as well. So, yeah, I promise motion as it stands.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussions? If not, I'll head back to Councillor Nelson for a summary.
Look, great conversations and valid points. And unlike my fellow councillor here, I actually agree with what he said. I think there are times to jump head first into things. And to be honest, if this was my money and what I was doing, I would jump first. I'd take the risk, but I'm a risk taker. But we sit back at times and we realise that it's not our money we're playing with, it's the ratepayers, and I think we need to be responsible. And that I think this is not going all in head first without having all the right information. This is a responsible step, and I think it's the right thing to do. So I encourage everyone's support.
Thank you. Okay, so let's put that to the vote. So we're voting on the second option. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 10.4, Safeguarding Children and Vulnerable People Policy, page 111, recommendations. Do I have a mover? Saw the Deputy Mayor's hand go up first. Sorry, Councillor Barnett, you can second.
Yeah, I'm happy to read this one. I've read it and note the updated policy, and yeah, that the revised version meets necessary standards.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I'd like to second. I think it's through having policies like these, and although we have to abide by all the various other different legislation, that's very important that we take a bit of a role in this in our communities. I would just like to query though on 3.1 under scope. It says this policy applies to all employees, volunteers, elected members, and so on. I'm just wondering whether when we're redoing our policies, it could be the situation that one is not an elected member, but I would prefer a council member, because elected member means that you are all elected, which we do happen to be this time, but you could be run for a council election, get elected without having to go through to a vote. So therefore you wouldn't be an elected member in the real sense of the word. So I would just query whether we could be using council member just to avoid that.
I think you'd be elected unopposed in that scenario, wouldn't you? CEO, have you got a view on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think actually Councillor Barnett has a point. It is possible for a council member to be elected unopposed, and under those circumstances, I have certainly had it put to me, although this is unique to South Australia, I must say, that under those circumstances, council member is the preferred terminology. So we've just exchanged a nod, myself and the relevant director, and that might be if we can make a minor administrative change, or whether members might see fit to, if it's not already in the recommendation, add the minor administrative change, and we can make that change.
Yes, thank you.
Good spotting, Councillor Barnett. Any further discussion on this one, Councillor Greg?
So first of all, thank you for bringing this to us. This is actually a really, really important policy. I know that we approved this in January this year. I just had a couple of questions. One was in relation to the frequency at which this needs to be reviewed. Just going through a very similar process in a different part of my life. This is being set, I think, for 3 years, so next review date being 27. Is there any requirement to have that review done more frequently, given this fairly significant rate of change of either regs of legislation or practice in terms of safeguarding? Has that advice been provided to us by the department, or is that our recommendation we'll do every 3 years?
CEO.
Ms. Taylor, do you have the answer to the question?
Through the chair, if there was any significant changes that would impact the policy, we would obviously update it at the time and bring it back. It's not a policy that needs to go out for public consultation, so we can be quite nimble in that way.
Yeah. My second question, sorry I had the black hat on this one. How will we know if there are changes? Are we notified, or do we have a process internally that alerts us to changes to practice that would elicit a change in the policy?
So through the Mayor, we have a couple of processes that obviously involve local government-based legislation, which Ms Medro tracks on our behalf and ensures that the appropriate council staff are made aware of. Ms Medro, is this one of those pieces of legislation you would be tracking through your processes, or would this be something that the department has to track?
Through the Mayor, both. So we have a register, as the CEO has said, that we track all the changes that come through. I keep a look at the legislative alerts, and we also, because of the relationship and the nature of this particular policy, if there were changes to the relevant legislation, they would contact us directly, as with other particular specific pieces of legislation, such as the disability and access is another one where if there are changes, they would come to us. So in this context, we'd get doubly informed.
My last question is, has there been any conversation around, obviously using the department to check our policy, which I think is a really sound, appropriate process, but also in terms of auditing our practices around this, because I think they're two very different things. Do we do any auditing around our child safeguarding practices, as opposed, because you can have a policy, but you might do something very different in practice?
Ms Taylor, if you would like.
Through the chair, not officially per se, but we certainly, my team particularly is very aware of this policy, and even our contractors. So if we have face painters or anyone like that come in, they're all subject to this standard as well. So whilst we probably don't have an official policy, everybody who comes near us in an event or a program or anything like that obviously is checked off through this process. And I think it's always front of mind, and my team know that I'm hot on this one particularly in that space.
Sorry, and one last question. I won't delay any further. But one last question you just prompted me to think about is obviously for events that we're running as a council, that's really easy to promulgate and make sure that people are doing the right thing. An event like we saw yesterday, where we have partly funded and partly supported but not owned or managed, are they subject to this policy, or is that a bit of a grey area?
So yeah.
It's a fascinating question. Unless it's captured in whatever grant funding agreement that we have with them, the answer would probably be no, Ms Taylor.
Through the chair, not directly. However, we tend to encourage those people who run events associated with the City of Prospect to follow a risk mitigation, I guess, pro forma that we provide to them, and that gives a whole heap of tick lists in that space, and that's one of the things that will prompt them to think about this aspect.
Look, my last comment, not a question, more of a comment, is that it may be worth giving some consideration to tying this into grant agreements at some point, because while there's always going to be risk around fire or tripping hazards or tag and testing, this is one that could, they could just get that face paint, use the wrong face paint or the wrong balloon town man or whatever it might be, and if something happens, rightfully, a question will come back and say, well, what will the council controls over child protection in the event that they partly funded? So I'm not suggesting an amendment, but I'd suggest that as nothing more than a suggestion. Thanks.
Thank you. Full stop. Thanks for those questions, Councillor Baker.
Just a quick question. With regards to our leasing and licensing policy, and obviously we have lots of facilities around the City of Prospect, and there are some that are used predominantly by children and families under the lease. Is there a requirement for the leaseholders where the activity is predominantly children and families to be also screened?
Do you mean formal structured organisations or informal?
Yeah, I'm not going to name any in particular because I'm not casting aspersions, but where we do have leasing and licensing where the visitation is predominantly children and families is a requirement from those leaseholders.
I can partly answer that, but I can't answer it from a broad perspective. I know that most organisations who are volunteers but who are running a situation such as you've explained would be required by the governing body of that sport or whatever it might be, that if they are coaching or umpiring or involved with kids in some way, they would have to have that sort of accreditation. So I can't speak on behalf of all, but I suspect that the answer would be that they should have, yeah.
So just maybe a comment more than anything, if that could be captured as part of the leasing and licensing discussion, that if it's a sporting club or an enthusiast club or whatever club where there are practices, what their steps they're being made to cover off on this kind of thing.
How do we, so you're just noting that and
For a discussion.
for a discussion when we're looking at leases and licensing and not specifically recommending a change to this policy. Okay, well that point's noted, and I'm sure that the administrative team will have a think about how they might better incorporate that in that process. Thank you, Councillor Baker. Are there any further questions? If not, I will head back to Deputy Mayor Nguyen to sum up, but I will note that part 3 has been added, and just checking that the mover and the seconder are okay with part 3 having been added. Councillor Barnett. Okay, Deputy Mayor Nguyen, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Group, for bringing that up. That was actually, something I didn't think of, but it's a good point to make. And we have events that we're funding. We should maybe have some kind of guidelines. Like Farley said, we do provide the checklist, so that's a good start. But yes, I am happy to move the motion and hope everyone supports it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 10.5, Bayindi Kamunka Steering Group Update. Recommendations on page 124. Do I have a mover for this one? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I think it's we've been having the group, particularly our last meeting where we met over at the Broadview site, and had quite, the wordsmithing that goes on and whatever. So we've come up with this, which is in the meeting now, and particularly with the group's purpose and vision. I think we know there are various things that have happened out in our wider society and community and nationally, and that certain views and that have are changed slightly. So that was reflected, I think, in the very respectful discussion and that we had at our last meeting. Again, we're just, the group is working its way through what could now be under the revised vision, some actions, and I think you'll read on page 126 that particularly during this year's Reconciliation Week, with Council facilitating the number of programs and the interest that there is in parts of our community. We have, 2 activities that were sold out. So I think that is good for our future. So I encourage us to move the motions that are before you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Nguyen.
Yeah, happy to second this one. I'm also a member with a co-councillor, and yeah, I think it's great, to review the current setup, and beneficial for the group to discuss, what their hopes and desires are for the future. There's always room for improvement, and yeah, this process would be a great way to do so, to ask the members in the community, what we'd like.
Great. Any further discussion on this one, Councillor Greg?
Just very briefly, I think this is a really interesting piece of work, and maybe a brave piece of work. I think the fact that there's been so much activity should lend us, or should help guide our thinking about what we want to get out of our budget and what we want to get out of our reconciliation activities. I was really excited to see that Reconciliation Week level of activity. Myself would prefer to support things that are sold out or things that are actually having some practical impact on the community. But I think this is a tricky space at times, and I think it's a good process to review it, and I look forward to seeing what comes out of it. But as much practical reconciliation for me and the community is really important.
Thank you. Any further discussions? If not, I'll head back to Councillor Barnett to sum up.
No, thanks.
Let's put that one to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, on to item 11, reports for information. There are 2 reports for information, and only items reserved by members will be debated. So, would anyone like to pull out item 11.1? Councillor Backer. Okay. Would anyone like to pull out 11.2? I will pull that one out. So, nothing on block. Councillor Backer would like to move motion 11.1. Yep. Over to you.
Yeah, look, I think the report indicates how much value we get out of this group. I know they've been integral in shaping some of the policies that we have. Certainly, from my point of view, it'd be really great to maybe have a presentation from the group, maybe just some summaries, because it's one of these things that where we've got we're talking to residents and businesses, and sometimes we're having to say, look, we need more accessible car parks, and that may mean that we don't have so many car parks or loading zones or whatever, but this is some feedback we've had. Or it may be something like even here, having Hearing Loop and having it captured on YouTube properly, and those kind of things. We have to invest this money to be able to capture those things. So it may be just a bit of a communications piece maybe 2 elected members and ways that we can disseminate out to a community. Because I think sometimes people go, oh, you know, we're spending this on this and this and this. Actually, it's not a choice. We need to do it by legislation, and it means it's accessible and inclusive for everybody. So yeah, I really value the work of this group, and yeah, encourages motion.
Thank you, Councillor Backer. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nguyen.
Happy to second this. I sit on this board along with Councillor Holland, and this group, they're very vocal and very proactive, and very engaging. Everything we put through to them, they come back with an inclusion access lens, and it helps us in our city, making it very, they're very supportive in that regard. So, concur with Councillor Tobacco in that we are very lucky to have such a group who are so engaging, to make our city much better. The value of this group is really good. Unfortunately, we were meant to take a photo at the last session. We did get quite a few members, but I noticed that we have invited extended invitations, and we've got a few new members at this group as well. We're always inviting other people in the community to join this group, but very active group, and I'm really proud to be a part of this group.
Thank you, Councillor Nguyen. Any further discussion on this one? Briefly from the Chair, this group has achieved a lot. The 3 key things I'd probably bring to our attention is the discussion around the hearing loop in this building, the work they did on the new building at Broadview, and they certainly changed a few aspects of what we were doing there. And we saw an excellent presentation prepared by John Duthie, I think his last name's Duthie, about his trip to Prospect Oval and the many pitfalls that he discovered. So maybe we could extend out, now that we're doing a fair bit more work with our community groups through the leasing and licensing program, maybe it's an opportunity to hold a workshop for that group, bring the 2 together and help the key representatives from that group to learn how to do the best they can do from an access and inclusion point of view. I think that would be a valuable exercise. Over to you to sum up, Councillor Tobacco.
There's just some very good points made, and we'll support the motion.
Thank you for that. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously.
Just second by Tweed and Trim. Councillor Tweed.
Mayoral Monthly Report. The reason I pulled that out was just to highlight a little bit of work that I did over the last month on the advocacy side of things. So I met with Ben Hood, member of the Legislative Council, on Friday, and he implored us, I guess, to continue to get behind the freight bypass project, and he's going full tilt at that. He's working with all the relevant mayors across the council areas that impacts, and he's very passionate about that, and wants us to continue to support it. We already have supported it already, so unless there's a move otherwise, I suspect that we should continue to support that. Also not mentioned in this report, because it just happened on Monday, but by the time the next report comes out in late January, it'll be a long time ago. So CEO and I met with Amy Grantham on Monday, who's the Liberal candidate for the seat of Adelaide, and we gave her the same opportunity that we gave to Steve Georgiadis with regards to the Broadview project, and we encouraged her to strongly consider including it as part of her election campaign. She was enthusiastic about it, pleased to be given the opportunity, and she will be doing something with that, we suspect. She's also going to attend the workshop next Tuesday night for the PLP process as well. She was quite interested. We also opened up a conversation which will take place in January regarding infrastructure and public transport from their perspective, so we could pitch to them some of the concerns we have, so that we're pitching to both parties on the same platform to cover all bases. So that was a good meeting, and we got a lot out of that. So I just wanted to pull those 2 things out. So I'm going to move that. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Barnett, any discussion?
No, just thank you for more of the insights of what you, the Mayor and together with the CEO and any other staff might support you. So thank you for that.
No worries. Any further discussion? I'll sum up. So the CEO and myself and Farley met to develop our plan for advocacy for 2025 last week as well. So we're kicking that process off early to get in front of the right stakeholders around the place, and we think we'll have a full year of advocacy activities coming up. Let's put that one to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 12, general business. We have council member reports received from Councillor Barnett and Councillor Nelson. Thank you very much. Item 12.2, motions on notice, there are nil. 12.3, questions with notice, there are nil. 12.4, are there any urgent motions without notice? 12.5, late reports. I think that's another new addition to the agenda, and there are nil.